Hello, and welcome to another kind of bookish video. I do a few different types of things on my channel, which is a hobby channel, but books is one of the things I make videos on occasionally. And the last time I was making videos about this, because I was reading a volume of this, The Captive, and I'm taking a little break from Proust now, having really enjoyed The Captive. I thought it was terrific. If you want to see some videos about that, a few videos back, you'll be able to find my thoughts on Jacques Tati and Proust. And I think there might be another video there as well discussing them, where I was doing bookbinding and I was starting The Captive at the time, and I was raving about absolutely loving it. So that was a wonderful book. But I like to take, when I have a big long book like that, I like to take a little break and go off and read something else. And the something else was a book that I've read before. And earlier this year in June, I made a video as well that slightly discussed this book, but discussed it in relation to Joyce's Ulysses and how that provided the schema for Joyce's Ulysses. But I decided, after Bloomsday was over and my stint on Joyce was done, and then I got onto The Captive, I decided, no, I want to go back and reread Homer's The Odyssey. So that's what I did, and that's what this video is about. So, although this video is specifically about the theme of transformation in the Odyssey, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown about what the book's about, even though I don't really give spoilers on my channel because I don't like seeing spoilers on books before somebody reads it. However, I can tell you that this book is the plot of the book is this hero returning from the Trojan War, trying to make his way home. So Odysseus, also known as Ulysses, and that's why I was doing him in relation to Joyce, um, wants to get home to Ithaca after a 10-year war, Trojan War, and it takes him 10 years to get home. And that's not a big spoiler because you find that out at the start of the book. You also find out very near the beginning that he gets home successfully. So that's not a spoiler either. But the excitement of the book lies in the fabulous story told about all his adventures on the way home. And this book, it was written in some sort of hexameter rhythm as an epic poem back as early as late 8th or 7th century, before the Christian era, by Homer. So not only is it an epic poem, you wouldn't guess from reading it in English, because they've had to translate it from presumably ancient Greece, and what translator wants to wrestle with trying to get the rhythm right in the poetry. But it's also considered the first novel, really. So any reader should be curious about this book and maybe consider reading it during their lifetime, because it's a fabulous story that kind of sets a pattern for storytelling, because this book, very old book, comes from an oral storytelling tradition. And the stories would have been, we can relate to this really well in Ireland, because the stories would have been learned off by bards and then told orally. So this is the first kind of writing down of that kind of thing. But the extraordinary thing about it is it reads in a very modern way, even though it's full of gods and goddesses and wild adventures. And it's a fantastic read as the autumn evenings are coming in. I love reading adventure books on cold evenings in front of the fire. So this is one of my favourites. And I know all the plot and everything, but it delights me every time I read it. And I have just passed the episode in it that is called The Cyclops. And it's just such a fantastic story in its own right. It's a story within a story because although Homer tells the story, Odysseus is sitting around at a banquet telling this story about a big adventure that he had on the way home. The guests have all asked him to tell that story. So it's full of amazing stories like that. But I'm going to say something about this. Uh, that's the plot. But there's another story underneath the plot, which I will tell you about now. So basically, in every story, there's a plot, isn't there? Whether it's a short story or an epic. And there's a plot, but the plot is what happens, the sequence of events, what happens next, how did the story start, the middle of the story, how did it end? And there's kind of a resolution to that. And when we ask somebody, what have you been reading? They'll tell you the plot of a book, won't they? What happened and whether they enjoyed the way the story was told. Great. But there's also a theme of a book, and the plot and the theme of a book are not necessarily the same thing, although they're interrelated and intertwined. So when you talk about books to people, sometimes they don't talk about the theme at all, and sometimes people can get through whole books without ever thinking about the theme. But really, when you're reading, a writer is asking you to think about the theme of a book. And as readers, it's good to be aware of what themes are and what theme or themes are running under the plot of a book. And the Odyssey is a great book to look at like that because I have a couple of other books that I decided to treat myself to while I'm reading this book. And one of them is one I've wanted for a long time by this guy, Joseph Campbell. And it's called A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And it wasn't cheap, but it's filled with beautiful illustrations and amazing thoughts because Joseph Campbell is or was, he's dead now, but was a mythologist. And he looks at a lot of the stories in this, they're based on mythology, aren't they? Greek mythology. But Joseph Campbell argues that this book, which is said to follow the pattern pretty well of this idea Joseph Campbell had about the hero's journey, he argued that a lot of stories are built around this idea of a hero's journey, which is a kind of a quest structure that follows particular steps. And it's very good to be aware of that while you're reading this book or very many books, even films, a lot of the films, people are aware of that kind of plot structure for storytelling. And this book, The Writer's Journey, which I haven't delved into yet either, and I'll give you a review of these two books when I read them. This is used by screenwriters a lot. Apparently, Star Wars people got their act together on the plot of the film and the themes and everything when they read this book, right? So this book is a book really about this book, right? So this book, I won't go on about it yet because there's a lot on YouTube. If you look up the hero's journey, you'll find out what that is. But the Odyssey sticks to that kind of a pattern. Some people say not that closely, but you can really see it in it. And when I was writing my first book, I used that hero's journey pattern for putting the book together. The plot of the book, but I had to work out the plot before you could work out the themes. So no writer writes a book without having something they want to say. So I'm going to discuss what themes are now, which are basically, and this theme of transformation, which is very, very important, both in Joseph Campbell's thinking and in what the writer is telling you in this very important book, The Odyssey. So, how does this theme of transformation relate to the plot of the book? Because Odysseus and his men are having these adventures trying to make their way home to Ithaca. But the hero's journey, the structure of that is that you set out on some kind of a quest. You have to answer a call to action from some sort of a mentor. So you have a choice to say no on this quest. You go off, you have these difficult adventures in the course of the plot, and then hopefully you have some sort of a successful outcome to the thing. Now, that's kind of the hero's journey structure, really pared down. There are a lot of steps in it, but that's it, pared down. But the transformative bit comes in the book because Odysseus has to renounce something. He has to really renounce the old him. And that's part of the hero's journey structure. The whole hero's journey storytelling device, if you like, is about a theme of transformation. And it's transformation of the individual on their path through life. And that's why this is a very important book for everybody to read, because anybody who's interested in taking an active role in their own life should be reading this, because there's such great food for thought in there that it's like an ancient banquet. And so you can see at several points in the book that the writer gives you clues that he has renounced his own self. He even calls himself nobody at a particular moment to give you more of a clue about this. And really what he's doing is, although there's a story around it, it's a metaphor for man's journey through life, the difficulties that he meets along the way, accepting that there are going to be challenges in life and actively participating in your life to overcome those challenges using your wits, your intelligence, your strength, and whatever prowess you have in that way. And if you face life like that, the writer tells us through this theme that you become transformed. And the idea of transforming in your life isn't such a big reach for us, because we do change anyway throughout our lives. But I think the important thing in Homer and in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey idea is the idea that you have to sign up for this transformation and say, yes, I'm going to meet life and accept all its challenges and do my best with life. And then the transformation happens if you do this because the gods, or fate, if you like, or circumstances even, will be on your side. Or not always. And that's part of an exciting story, isn't it, when they aren't? Because some of the gods are on Odysseus' side and some aren't, and fighting him all the way. And life's a bit like that, isn't it? But if you accept the challenge and sign up for it, hopefully you arrive home, and home can be this transformed you. And, you could have further adventures in the future that might transform you further. But the transformed you is better equipped to handle the challenges of life. So I would suggest that this is a fantastic book for any reader or any writer to read. And that Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which I'm going to be reading about more in this. There's plenty, as I say, on YouTube about him, and plenty on the internet about him if you want to read about the hero's journey and that plot structure. And as a reader, it's worth finding out about. And as a writer, it's really worth finding out about. So, yeah, I'd suggest that at some stage during your own life, if you're a person who likes to reflect on your life, that you might want to read that book for not just a fantastic story, well told by a wonderful bard, uh, but a book which will make you reflect on your own life, and I think a very rewarding, enriching book. I wouldn't be reading it a second time if it wasn't a really good book. It's one of my favorites, this one. And 8th or 7th century before Christian era, first novel. I mean, who wouldn't want to read that? Okay, and I'll give you my thoughts on the other books when I finish them as well. I don't always read a few books together, but I really wanted that Joseph Campbell one for ages, so I treated myself. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.